Hi, this is Joe again with another review. For the sake of this video, we're going to be discussing the 1959 horror film, The Alligator People. Yes, I am not joking, there actually was a movie called The Alligator People that came out in 1959. Of course, the only real big name star that was in this movie was Lon Chaney Jr., the Wolfman. And I don't know if it was his last horror film he did, but he had a real small role in this thing. That's the only real big name, as far as I know, it was in this film. And I just watched this movie last night. And it's really quite short. It's less than 90 minutes, which for a movie like this is a good thing. Because some of the better horror movies are under 90 minutes. Like the old Universal monster films. They're all under 90 minutes. And it gets you through it a lot faster to go through all the classic Universal monster films. But this one, I don't think this one was with Universal. It's another movie studio. But anyway, enough of that. The plot of The Alligator People is there's this woman, this beautiful nurse, this beautiful girl. I mean, she was smoking. She was hot. And she claimed that she was married, or that she believed she was married, because her memory is not, it's a little foggy, and she's not 100% sure if she even was married, or she was at least involved with somebody. She doesn't remember if she was married to this guy or not, and that her husband, in quotes, was missing, and he's still missing. So what happened was, she goes to a psychiatrist. She's in treatment, and the psychiatrist brings in another psychiatrist and a colleague to see, what happens with this patient. Why don't you advise me on this patient? And he says, okay. He wants to back up. I guess get a second opinion in his story, or to confirm his opinion. But there's a psychiatrist in there. And he says, and he hypnotized the nurse, and he goes back to what happened, and pretty much the rest of the movies, until maybe the final scene, is all in flashbacks. And she's telling the story under hypnosis, what happened, and yes, she was married to, she just got married to this guy, and they were on a train. And he gets off the train. He gets a message from the conductor. There's a message here for you. And he reads it, and immediately he gets off the train. And the very next, it wasn't really a stop, which was maybe to get more food, or to pick up mail or something. It doesn't matter. This is a mail stop. This is not an official stop. You can't get off here. But the guy got off anyway. Contacts the phone. Gets on the phone. He doesn't get on the train fast enough, and the train pulls out without him on. So his wife is going nuts. She says, "Hey, my husband, you left without my husband. You pulled out without him." So what the wife does is that she goes to the next stop. She gets off, and she has to track the husband down, and she hires a private detective, finds out where he used to live. Tracks him down in this old mansion in the bayou in Louisiana, in the state of Louisiana. Tracks him down, and he finds out that there's some crazy experiment stuff going on with the alligator population there, and the people who live in this mansion. And one of the people, he doesn't live there, he works there, was played by Lon Chaney Jr., and he has a hook on his hand. He lost a hand to the alligators. There was one alligator that attacked him or something, and he lost a hand. So he has this grudge against the gators, in the bayou. And I figured, okay, that was kind of distracting. A distracting scene from the plot to pan this movie out, I guess. And she finds out that her husband was there at this estate, and she finds out that he was actually part of an experiment. And she talks to this doctor, typical man. It wasn't really a typical mad scientist story, but it's a story where he did an experiment and the experiment has gone bad. And the problem was, and he did mention it earlier on in the film, that the husband was in the war, and there wasn't sure if it was World War II or the Korean War, because the Korean War has just happened like a few years earlier, like about like 6 or 7 years earlier. Yeah, the Korean War had ended. So you don't know if it's the Korean War or World War II. You're really not sure. But anyway, it didn't make that fact clear. We should point that out. So anyway, he was a pilot in the war. His plane crashed and he was severely injured, and he miraculously recovered. But the truth of the matter was that he met up with this doctor when he was injured in the army hospital, and what this doctor did was injected him with alligator DNA or gator DNA, or a serum they produced from alligators that will grow back either missing limbs or repair the broken bones. I think maybe the story of this movie, I'm not, after hearing that plot point, it reminded me, maybe this is how Stan Lee got the inspiration to create the Lizard. The Spider-Man villain, the Lizard, because it sounds like a similar plot. And how Kirk Connors became the Lizard in the Spider-Man comics. It's almost the same thing, except it was lizard DNA. It was alligator DNA. It does a variant of the story, but it sounds like it's almost the same story as I was watching this movie. I said, hey, that's how the lizard got started. That's the thought that crossed my mind, because I am a Spider-Man fan, and that's how the lizard got started. So the guy used dinosaur alligator DNA and pumped it into this woman's husband, and he became an alligator man, or an alligator person. And he tried the same thing on a bunch of all the guys who were in that particular helicopter crash, but other accident victims, or people who lost a limb or stuff like that, and ejected them, and they all became alligator people. Because the DNA, the human DNA, got mixed up with the alligator DNA, and the two of them formed, combined, and created alligator people. And he's trying to help, separate the alligator DNA from the human DNA. Even though they use DNA in the movie, or the term DNA in the movie, I should say, but they're trying to separate the gator from the human enzymes with the gator enzymes and stuff like that, and it just wasn't working. But he was trying to do what he can to get rid of the alligator portion of the person's bodies, or the people's bodies. And of course during the movie, the woman, or the wife, she gets out and she gets captured, or she gets caught by Lon Chaney, and Lon Chaney brings her to his little cabin that's on the grounds, and he's trying to attack her, and she gets out, and of course her husband, who's now an alligator man, saves her life and beats up doesn't kill Lon Chaney, but nearly kills him. And he says, and Lon Chaney Jr. goes, I want to get even with that gator guy. And so he's running around the whole estate looking for the gator guy, and then he ends up and then Lon Chaney breaks into the lab, so it's tearing it apart, and then he gets into a huge fight with the gator guy. Wait a minute, are you the guy who nearly kicked my butt before? Oh my goodness, no, you're really a gator guy. And they had a big, the Wolfman versus the Gator guy. That's what Lon Chaney was. He would always be the Wolfman, and he's now going after the Gator guy. It would have been real cool if he transformed into the Wolfman, and had this fight, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. It would have been damn cool, but it didn't happen. and of course the husband, who's now the full-blown gator man, landed in quicksand and dies. And the house where all the shenanigans was going on, creating these alligator people, that house gets blown up because of all the radiation from the experiment. Because they had a Cobalt 70 that was very radioactive. The thing gets blown up sky high, and then she ends up getting. You don't even know how she got back to where she was, but the two psychiatrists listened to the whole story on tape because they were recording the story from this nurse, and it says, and the two doctors come up with the fact that they weren't sure if she made up the story or not. It's still kind of foggy. They weren't 100% sure if she made up the story or not. And then he said, "Oh, should we tell her?" It looks like that she forgot. Instead of a traumatic, that she completely blanked. She lost her memory. She doesn't even remember what happened to her husband and stuff. I said, and they're like, should we tell her what happened? And they're like, nah, let's not tell her. And she comes in for the report and says, anything? And she goes, "Is there anything else, doctors?" I said, "No, there's nothing else. You go home." I said, "Okay." And she walks out of the office, and that's how the movie ends. That's kind of like a lousy ending for this movie. I think it would have been cool if she actually did remember. I mean, it's kind of like a lame way to end the movie, like she didn't remember and stuff. But until the ending, I thought this was not a bad film. At least it held my interest. It was one of those cheesy horror films from the 1950s. And it was really the end of the 50s, really, because the movie came out in 1959. But it was I thought it was pretty cool, pretty interesting. But it was also a stereotypical horror film genre from that time as well. So it did have some problems because it's kind of cheesy, but it did have it had a lot of horror movie cliches, like the woman that she doesn't want, who turned out to be the alligator man's mother. Spoiler. She wanted the woman out of the house, and you had this crazy guy, Lon Chaney playing a crazy guy who lives out in the woods. You have the mad well, not really a mad scientist, but a mad scientist with all that. I mean, you had all these horror movie cliches that was popular at the time. But they make all the kind of crazy horror films, but not with alligators. So that in itself was interesting, but everything else was kind of cheesy. It's kind of almost like a Spider-Man plot, like I mentioned earlier. But the movie itself, it wasn't bad. It wasn't a horrible movie, but I felt it could have been slightly better. I know I'm nitpicking over it, but it could have been slightly better. So that's my review of the movie, The Alligator People. Please click on the video. Please rate it. Please subscribe to my channel. Please forward this video onto your Facebook pages. You can check out all my reviews on my YouTube channel at RowdyC.com. It's all WDY and LSC.com. The homepage is the Rowdy Reviewer, Chris Lee Moore, and please check out all of his videos on his website. Thanks for watching, and catch you next time.